Good evening and welcome. I'm Robert Martinez, and the topic I am going to be discussing today is freedom probation of religion. Now, I understand that this topic always has been and it always will be a difficult and a touchy subject for most. But I'm going to be sharing some key components that are closely associated to this topic. I'm also going to be sharing with you a case study that I researched, and it's going to show how some of these factors are lived throughout on a daily basis. I also want to see and get to the bottom of it, of who is really affected by this topic. So some of the key factors that we're going to go through today is definitions of this topic, the history of this topic, laws and some forms of discrimination, ethical considerations, potential problems, current event, and I will also share my references with you. So the definition of freedom is the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. It is the state of not being imprisoned or enslaved. We all know that freedom gives us the right to act freely, to act as we want. The definition of probation is the testing or trial of a person for membership in a religious body or order. And the definition of religion is the belief and worship of a superhuman controlling power. It may be a personal god or multiple gods. So the history of this topic. Freedom of religion is included in the First Amendment. And in that First Amendment is where you have most of your freedoms, like the freedom of speech, freedom of press, and the freedom of religion. So the framers wanted the First Amendment to include religious freedom because of the religious restrictions that they were being faced with in England. And the First Amendment separated church from state, but it did not separate religion from public life. Now, many people left Europe and came to America simply for religious freedom. It was important for them to be able to worship freely. And in the early American era, people were not allowed to worship freely. So for an example was Anne Hutchinson, and she was banished from Boston, Massachusetts in 1637 for her religious and feminist beliefs. She then moved on to Rhode Island. Today, there are over 3,000 religious groups throughout the entire world. Some of the laws associated to this topic. Employers are not bound by the Constitution's restrictions on government, but they are subject to state and federal laws. Those laws ban religious discrimination in employment, and Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 prohibits private employers from discriminating on several bases, which include the following: race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. And in all honesty, some religions do not associate themselves with people of certain races or people of certain sexual orientations. There are many state laws that also prohibit any form of discrimination, disparate treatment, disparate impact, and a hostile work environment. Those are the forms of discrimination that I'll be sharing with you next. So as I mentioned, these forms of discrimination. Disparate treatment is a form of discrimination which involves unequal treatment that is based off of an employer's religion. So an example of this is an employer that only hires or promotes the hiring of members of a particular religion. This could be because they share or they don't share the same religion as that employer. Disparate impact is a form of discrimination which is more subtle, a little less vocal, more quiet. And the example of that is rules that do not allow wearing of hats or clothing during business hours that conflict with the dress rules of particular religions that are to be worn in public. And a hostile work environment is a form of discrimination where the employer allows a hostile environment by harassment based off of an employee's faith. So an example of this is insults, threats, intimidation, teasing, etc. In my experience, I have seen a hostile work environment more than anything else. I have also noticed that teasing isn't always going to stay just in those walls. Once a person gets comfortable with that, it'll eventually move further and further and further until the person that has been teased or hated on is no longer able to handle all that pressure. Ethical considerations. So as our textbook defines, ethical issue is a problem, situation, or opportunity that requires an organization to choose among several actions that must be evaluated as right or wrong, ethical or unethical. And an ethical dilemma is a problem, situation, or opportunity that requires an organization to choose among several actions that have negative outcomes. There is not a right ethical choice in a dilemma, and that is difficult. Ethical considerations continued. Businesses are serving people of other religions, and that in and of itself is a difficult ethical dilemma. Personal beliefs, what business owners want to support. Private business owners are usually based and founded off of their beliefs, and they stay true to that throughout the business that they conduct. And legal obligations are what business owners are required by law to do. There's no right or correct option. So the potential problems. Who is affected? Religious liberty versus legal obligations. Who has the right to refuse service? That is an important factor. I mean, have you ever walked into an establishment, whether it be a restaurant, a gas station, and you saw a sign and it said, "We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone"? Or no shirt, no shoes, no service. I know I, for one, have. So the answer to that question is we are all affected. We are affected in the workforce. We are affected by services that we purchase. We are affected even in schools. And as I mentioned schools, there's a case that I researched, and it is the Christian Legal Society versus Martinez. And what this case is it's a United States Supreme Court case, and it is against the University of California, Hastings College of Law. And what it was governing bodies of students were only allowing certain members to come into this group as long as the religion fit into the category of everybody else. As I mentioned also in the workplace, Samantha Elow versus Abercrombie and Fitch. Now, this was a woman of Muslim descent, and this is where her beliefs were. And she was not given the position at Abercrombie and Fitch because of a headdress that she had to wear. One of the questions I asked her in her interview is if she was willing and would be able to not wear that to work. And as far as services go, Craig and Mullins versus Masterpiece Cake Shop. Now, this was a gay couple that walked into a cake shop and wanted to purchase a wedding cake for their upcoming wedding. The owner of the cake shop did not agree with their lifestyle, with their beliefs, so he refused service. This is a problem that will affect and has continued to affect religion on a daily basis. So the current event I am sharing with you today, Alcantara versus Bed Bath & Beyond. This was a Muslim man who grew out his beard due to religious reasons, and when his mother was diagnosed with cancer, he felt that growing out his beard would bring him closer to his religion. That way he could have better results and better faith for his mother's healing. His beard was groomed and trimmed on a regular basis and was in compliance with the company policies. After he grew out his beard, he was attacked verbally by colleagues on a daily basis. He reported these complaints to the HR department on a daily basis, but was told that it was all just a joke. And in my opinion, Had he have never reported these, then HR would have said, well, you should have came to us and reported these. He openly shared that he was a Muslim. He had nothing to hide, and the reason that he was growing out his beard. Well, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission determined in July of 2015 that Alcantara was discriminated against based on religion and was issued a right to sue letter in September. Now, the way that they ended up terminating him was they told him that he was not scheduled to work on a certain day, when in fact they had put him on the schedule to work that day, and that's why they terminated him. That's what they tried to use to get him out. Well, then Alcantara ended up reversing it and suing based off of the fact that he felt that he was discriminated against based off of his religion. And not only that, I mean, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission also felt the same way. So here's my references associated to the topic that I researched and that I shared with you today. As I mentioned, this topic is never going to be simple, and it's never going to be easy. Someone will always be affected. It's important to remember that when you feel the need to make a joke or you feel the need to make a statement, that it could possibly hurt somebody whether you're joking or not. We are all affected in this. We are all affected whether we are a student, whether we are an employee, or whether we just walk into a store one day. Our appearance, our looks, our beliefs, they go with us everywhere. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. Have a good evening.